Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. I want to share with you a wonderful nonprofit organization that basically bridges the gap to access of education and eventually degrees and also college. And they essentially walk the journey with students from elementary school right on up in a very special area of Ohio, but not centrally located there. In general, we also have international students they also work with. And this gentleman is the man behind it. We call him Dr. John. He joins us on the program today. How are you?
I am doing good. Thank you, Steve, for having me on your platform.
Wonderful to have you here. And thank you for creating this nonprofit. Tell us about it. It's called Ekaza?
Yes, it's called Ekaza, Bridging the Gap. Ekaza in my native tongue means bridge. Bridging the gap to access to education, persistence, and degree attainment. Because we understand that, there are many roadblocks to education, whether it is higher education or even trade education. There are many roadblocks. Especially, this is particularly true for minority, low-income, and first-generation students, right? Now, we also know that persistence, it's sometimes not obvious. And degree attainment, we do see as we look at data, we compare the number of students who are graduating from high school and those who are obtaining their bachelor degree and going to pursue their master's degree, the numbers are going lower and lower, right? So obviously, there is a struggle there when it comes to degree attainment. So Ekaza aims to not only foster access to higher education, but also to help students persist and attain their degree in a timely manner.
So it's my understanding, and before I even get there, you mentioned the trades. Did I hear you correct?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm seeing and hearing from others is that many high schools don't embrace the trades like they used to years ago. The focus is now on making sure grades are up and it looks good for the school district. I'm going to be honest there.
Yes, absolutely.
For college placement. However, we're ignoring the trades, and there are some students that don't have an interest in going to college. They want to focus on trades. As far as I know, in our lifetime, we're going to need plumbers. We're going to need electricians, and it's kind of been pushed over to the side, whereby back in the day, no, that was actually embraced with certain programs. Do you see that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I do see that. That is the very reason why it is important to recognize that not everyone will want to go to college. And for a nation, let's face it, it's not obvious that everyone is going to go to college, regardless of how we put things, right? As you mentioned, we are going to need plumbers. We're going to need framers, right? Now, I had a great experience in 2022 to actually design my own house and building it from the ground up. And I did see, people who were actually working on that house. And it is a fact that we found these people. Some specialize in cooling, some specialize in heating, some specialize in network. I mean, without these trades, my house wouldn't exist. That's a fact.
Yes.
Right? And an engineer is not going to say, well, Dr. Jean, you want to build your house? I got your back. I'm going to build it myself with my own hands without relying on, trade skill to do that.
Absolutely. And many opportunities are there for people who want to embrace the trades like plumbers and electricians. Sometimes the schooling is low cost or free, and they make a lot of money nowadays.
Yes.
I had a friend that just had a boiler fixed, had to call a company, wasn't covered by their oil company. They didn't have a service contract. It was I think it was $225 an hour just to repair the boiler. Just one example of the trades.
Yeah.
Before we get deeper into Ekaza, Dr. Jean, can you tell me your backstory? You're a college professor, right? How did you get
Yes,
to this point?
yes, I am a college professor. I'm actually a full professor at Kent State University, which is an accredited um, academic institution in Northeast Ohio. It's one of the leading academic institutions in Northeast Ohio. As a matter of fact, Kent State is rated as R1 institution. What this means, it's that Kent State is very much engaged in research and they have high achievement in research, right? Whether you are thinking about biological sciences, engineering, aeronautics, public health, Kent State is very much high up there when it comes to research productivity and transforming not just our community, but quite frankly, the world. So Kent State is high up there in terms of research. So as of what I do as a what I would call day job is to be a college professor. And I do teach a wide range of biological science courses, including microbiology, which is, by the way, my specialty. Then I also do teach anatomy and physiology for nursing students. Um, I teach VETech students, human genetics, and life on planet Earth, just to mention only those few courses. But I do teach a wide range of courses, and I also do some research on improving the quality, actually trying to understand the impact of wastewater treatment facilities
Mm.
on surface water. And very specifically, I'm interested in understanding the occurrence of antimicrobials and antimicrobial bacteria, and antimicrobial resistant bacteria. I mean, bacteria that are resistant, I'm sorry, to antimicrobials in surface water. And my specific focus right now is the Cuyahoga River, which occurs in Northeast Ohio.
I'm gonna digress for just a split second, but
Okay.
seeing a lot of it, especially today, microplastics in our water supply or waterways. Is that on your radar in the scope of what you do?
Well, in the scope of what I do know, now it is a fact that microplastic it's a major issue
Yeah.
in surface water right now, whether you are talking about streams, rivers, seas, oceans, and particularly our open oceans, right? Microplastic is a major issue. But no, this is not something I focus on. I kind
Sure.
of remain to my microbiology segment, more of the impact of the chemicals we are using, and specifically antimicrobials, right, on our environment, but eventually on our health too. Because when we use antimicrobials, they end up in our streams and rivers.
Yep.
Those of us who are fishing, those of us who are, enjoying the outdoor, right? Are we at risk of catching a microorganism that is going to be resistant to the very drug that we use, for instance, to treat urinary tract infections, which are very common in our community?
I only brought that up, and actually, to your point of our health, there was a story research out today that says there's a very strong chance that the microplastics is the reason why more and more people are getting cancer. So it's kind of curious. I knew you were aware. I was just kind of curious about that. Like literally just came out. Dr. Jean, you obviously have an affinity to help people. You
Sure.
started this organization. You're a teacher, professor because you like making a difference and helping others. Where does that come from in your life? Is it from your childhood? Is it from a mentor? What's going on there?
It is actually very complex. It is actually very complex. It's a mix of many things, right? Now, from my childhood, it is a fact that my mom and dad influenced me a lot. My dad was an elementary school teacher. Now, at the time my dad went to school to become an elementary school teacher, there was no such thing as going to college to become an elementary school teacher. Well, but here is the thing. My dad was very much, he wanted me to study. He wanted me to study, and he wanted me to go the extra mile. Now, my mom, on the other hand, she's a hard worker. She's still alive. She's 76 now. She's a hard worker, and she taught me from my very childhood that I should work hard. And she took me with her, you know, in the farm, in the different things, the different activities she was doing. I was there with her. I was her first boy, right? So during my childhood, really, I had to, work because my parents, wanted me to work. But eventually, I was driven by the desire to achieve something, right? And beyond that desire to achieve something, then I realized that, well, yeah, you do this and this and that, but how about others around you, right? Can you use some of what you've learned to impact positively your community? What kind of environment do you want to see around you, right? Because it is easy to say that, well, this is not going right, this is not going right. But question is, what are you doing about making the community, the environment, the kind of environment you deem right? So giving back to my community has been at the forefront of my mind, and being a college professor and seeing students struggling, particularly students from low income, first generation, historically disadvantaged people. I've seen them struggling. And what I've noticed, Steve, is that a lot of the students that I've encountered and who have told me, well, I don't think that college is for me, forget about it, I'm going to do something else. They did not necessarily come to that conclusion because they were not able to, or college was not for them. It is so much because they encountered systemic barriers that caused them to think that I'm not a good fit for this, right? A lot of students have given up just because they don't understand the intricacies of higher education, because let's face it, higher education is very complex, right? Me, myself, as an international person, I came to the United States coming from Gabon and then France, where I lived for 7 years. I had to learn the higher education system, how it works. And what is interesting, it's that a lot of students within our system have a hard time, regardless if they grew up in the United States or not. They have a hard time navigating the educational system, right? So having seen that, I started asking myself, is your goal to just come to class, teach your biology class, and say, I've achieved what I was scheduled to do today? Well, at some point I thought to myself, no. And I started telling myself, you know what? If the only thing you learn from me, it's biology, which I'm here to teach, I consider that I have failed to do my job. That may sound weird, But when you consider the fact that many students, when you look at them in a holistic manner, right, need more than just learning the biological science material, right? They need to learn how to study. They need to learn how to navigate college so that they can not just focus on their degree, but what do I do with my degree after I graduate, right? How do I make sure that I'm making a choice that is not going to cost me time, money, and energy so that I can graduate in a timely manner? I've seen students who have graduated for, say, a bachelor. Rather than graduating within 3 years and a half, 4 years, they graduate after 6 years. How do we explain that when sometimes these students are full-time students, right? These students are not graduating late because they are not smart. No. I've seen over and over students graduating late because they start with a particular major and then they realize at some point that, oh, well, I don't think that this is working for me. I'm changing my major. And then they would change another major. Some students actually will change their major 3, 4 times. That is a major problem. And that costs them money, time, and energy, right? But how do we, prevent or tackle this kind of issue? And that's the rationale for Ekaza, to make sure that we provide the assistance that is needed for the students to actually be guided as soon as they hit the door of a college, right? Or before then, right? And this is when we can actually go back and see, okay, well, what is your approach? How do you prepare students for college? How do you work with them while they are in college so that they exit college by the big door, right? And with a prospect of employment at the end of the day, right?
Wow.
Because we see more and more today, students saying, well, college is too expensive. Yes, it is a fact that college is expensive, right? I know so many people who have gone to college, they graduated, they obtained their degree, but they don't even work in the field they went to college for, right? Therefore, what is the reason for me to go to college, right? So we hear a lot of different things, right? But what we're trying to do, and with Ekaza, is to provide the guidance needed for this to happen, for students to reach their goals to graduate and to indeed go in the field that they feel interests them.
And it seems that there's many different aspects of Ekaza, STEM programs, elementary or older, entering high school.
Yes.
And we'll explore that in future episodes. But international students, tell us about how you support them.
Well, one of the things that we see in our educational system is that, now, first of all, let's me say that international education is very important for this country from many perspectives, right? But I'm not going to dive into those different perspectives. However, what we notice is that when international students come in our system, they are not always prepared to tackle the challenges that are ahead of them, right? I'm not going to dive too much into this, but if you consider, for instance, our learning management system different institutions are using different learning management system. You have Blackboard. I mean, I'm not here to advertise anyone, right? You have Blackboard, you have Canvas, you have D2L, you have many learning management platforms. And these learning management platforms, I've seen many international students coming in class and not knowing how to turn in their work that they did, right? They did some work, but they just don't know how to submit the work, how to see the comments that instructors are putting. Especially, this is particularly true when it comes to online education, right? Today, we have a huge proportion of our education that is happening online. And a lot of students are struggling to understand how to make the most out of the learning management system when it comes to online education. In a nutshell, we see international students coming and struggling when they come in. And also when it comes to immigration. Now, the student come in, right? They think that, okay, well, I'm here to study. But there is also the administrative segment, right? And if the administrative segment is not where it needs to be, well, it doesn't matter how smart you are. You are going to find yourself in a situation where administratively, the system is going to tell you that, well, X, you are not in good standing. And because you are not in good standing, sorry, you cannot register for classes. That has nothing to do with being smart or not, right? The student has to know that there is a deadline for signing up for something, for paying your bills, right? Or else there is a trickle-down effect, right? Where you actually cannot go to class. And if you cannot go to class, you may lose your immigration status. And if you lose your immigration status, it only goes downhill from there.
All of these things we are unaware of, especially right down to the education management system. And you could have the brightest student, and then they come up with that roadblock of that system.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to navigate it. Now they're late turning in assignments. There's just all issues right there. That's one thing that none of us would ever even think of. Wow, eye opener.
Now, Steve, let me share a quick experience with you. Teaching an online course, a semester typically lasts 17 weeks, right? 16 to 17 weeks. Now, I'm teaching an online course, and obviously all assignments are online, right? Course material, assignments. And then maybe 8 weeks within the course, I receive an email from a student in my class. And the student tells me, well, Dr. Jean, I'm really sorry to say this, but I've been struggling to see the comments on the discussion module, and the assignment have turned in because there were some assignment where he needed to work on those assignments again based on the feedback I had provided. And they told me for the past 6 weeks, for the past 8 weeks, I have not been able to see the feedback.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. We are week 8. This is midway to the semester. And you have not been able to see the feedback so that the student was not able to improve their work. And then I think to myself, wow, that's a problem, right? And the problem is that it's not one single student. It's sometimes a handful of students, right? Now, while one may think that a handful of students out of, say, 40 students, it's not a lot, but for that student, it's a lot, right? And I take students one at a time. I don't look at numbers. I look at Steve or Harper, right? How am I helping you get to the next level, right? Each student has to be able to receive that level of assistance. And noticing that one student is actually reaching midway without knowing how to see the feedback in an assignment, well, that's a problem. And right there, a student does not have a way to validate, to pass that course in a good manner, right? So that's just an example.
Wow. I can't, all the energy, all the brilliance that that student has, and they come up to that roadblock, and essentially you grab their hand and walk them over the Ekaza. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
And actually, and this is where I actually want to dive into the approach that we use at Ekaza that we call proactive advising.
Well, we're just about out of time, so let's table that for the next time we get together. Now, I would assume that you would welcome support if somebody hears this, no matter where they are.
Absolutely. And listen, Steve, and one of the limitation that we have, it's the lack of support, right? We are a nonprofit organization. We have a 501c3, which means that all donations made to Ekaza, can be claimed in your tax return as the deduction dollars, right?
Okay.
So you can, those who want to support this initiative, which is actually very crucial if you do care about social justice, right? Because equal opportunity when it comes to education, the ability to access education, to persist, and to attain a degree in a timely manner, right? And when we consider the systemic barriers that exist, right, we have to recognize that, well, somebody has to pay the bill, right? Somebody has to pay the bill because, this work that we do, it's free to our students, right? Students do not ever pay out of pocket anything. So what we do it, with the donations of people. So if people would like to make some donations, they can visit us at at our website, which is Ekaza, EKAZA, They can visit our website and make donations there. They can also find us on Venmo, on PayPal. We welcome donations, and we would provide a receipt for your donation, and you can claim your donation as a tax deduction whenever you file your taxes.
I look at it this way for the rest of us that have gone through school. Think about if you had those blocks, each one of us, and you had no way to get past it. Imagine if you were using a system in school and you can't see the comments, and now you're penalized by the teacher or professor because, let's say, you're an international student, you had no idea. Um, Wonderful program, Dr. Jean, and future episodes when we get together, would love to talk about the STEM program and so much more. Thank you for being here today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And I want to also make sure that, in the future episode that we really spend some very specific time on the proactive advising model, because it's very important that people understand, right, the difference between the proactive advising model and the traditional advising model that exists in our academic institutions, regardless of where you go.
I'm truly intrigued about that and want to learn. I really do. Uh, Appreciate you being here. We'll catch up next time we get together.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.